When people talk about timeless movie stars, the name Kevin Costner inevitably comes up, not only because of his dominance at the box office through the late 20th century but because of the extraordinary women he worked beside during that run. Performers who didn't simply complement his leading man aura but reshaped entire films through their presence. One of the most profound collaborations of his career came with Whitney Houston in The Bodyguard, a casting choice he personally championed at a time when executives doubted whether the world's most famous vocalist could convincingly transition into acting. Costner was struck not just by Houston's star power but by the vulnerability beneath it, sensing that her offstage shyness and guarded warmth mirrored the emotional isolation of Rachel Maror. During production he reportedly became a steadying force, advocating for rehearsal time, offering encouragement when the pressure mounted, and shielding her from skeptical studio oversight. He later described watching her grow into the role as witnessing an artist step into a new destiny, noting that her beauty was inseparable from the emotional risk she took in front of the camera. After Houston's death, Costner's eulogy revealed how deeply he revered her not simply as a performer but as a human being burdened by expectations far beyond what most people could endure, praising her generosity, fragility, discipline, and courage. In his eyes, Houston represented a form of cinematic beauty that combined radiant public glamour with private sensitivity, a duality that made her unforgettable and that transformed The Bodyguard into something far more resonant than a conventional romance thriller. An entirely different kind of screen magnetism captivated him when he cast Mary McDonnell in Dances with Wolves, a project that Costner shepherded with near-obsessive devotion as both director and star. He needed someone who could embody cultural displacement, resilience, and emotional intelligence without slipping into romantic cliché, and McDonnell immersed herself in the psychological reality of stands with a fist with scholarly intensity. Costner later reflected on how she brought gravity to scenes that could have dissolved into spectacle, grounding sweeping landscapes with interior life and restraint. Her quiet authority and ability to convey trauma without melodrama gave the film a moral backbone, and he credited her with helping elevate the story from Western adventure to cultural reckoning. What struck him most was her intellectual approach to character, how she asked questions about history, identity, and language, and insisted on authenticity even when it complicated production. To Costner, McDonnell's beauty lay in composure, intelligence, and emotional clarity rather than ornamentation, a reminder that cinematic allure often deepens when an actor disappears entirely into lived experience. With Robin Wright in Message in a Bottle, Costner encountered yet another variety of magnetism, one built on stillness rather than flourish. Wright's performance style favored understatement, letting silences carry grief and longing rather than relying on overt emotional displays, and Costner admired her refusal to oversell sentiment in a story steeped in loss. He later spoke about how she transformed romantic material into something meditative, allowing audiences to lean in rather than be pushed toward feeling. Her face, expressive yet restrained, reminded him of classic Hollywood stars while her psychological realism felt entirely modern, creating a bridge between eras that fascinated him as a filmmaker. In his estimation, Wright's beauty wasn't something that announced itself instantly. It unfolded over time, becoming more compelling as layers of vulnerability, intelligence, and resilience emerged beneath the surface. The kinetic energy of Renee Russo in Tin Cup offered Costner a co-star who met swagger with wit and romance with steel-spined confidence. Russo refused to play the love interest as decoration, instead crafting a woman who challenged the hero intellectually and emotionally, and Costner later said that her assertiveness reshaped the film's tone entirely. What impressed him was her refusal to surrender authority in scenes dominated by masculine bravado, creating chemistry rooted in equality rather than conquest. He admired how she blended humor, sensuality, and skepticism, grounding the film's tall-tale sports mythology with human stakes. For Costner, Russo embodied a modern kind of beauty, defined by self-possession, verbal sharpness, and an unwillingness to be sidelined, which made their dynamic crackle in ways audiences instantly recognized as authentic. During the notoriously demanding production of Waterworld, Costner forged a bond with Jeanne Tripplehorn, whose composure under punishing conditions left a lasting impression on him. Filming in open ocean waters, enduring logistical chaos, and battling constant media scrutiny required a level of endurance few productions demand, and Costner later remarked that Tripplehorn's steadiness and emotional focus were nothing short of heroic. She managed to project vulnerability and resolve simultaneously while coping with physical exhaustion, a balancing act he viewed as emblematic of true professional strength. In his telling, her beauty stemmed from persistence, the ability to remain artistically present when circumstances conspired to erode morale, and that resilience elevated her performance far beyond the genre expectations of blockbuster spectacle. Years later, working on Hidden Figures brought Costner into collaboration with Octavia Spencer, whose authority and warmth reshaped every scene she entered. Costner has spoken admiringly of Spencer's timing, moral clarity, and emotional accessibility, noting that she commanded attention without theatricality. Her humor was precise, her anger righteous without being shrill, and her dignity unforced, embodying a mature form of cinematic beauty rooted in character rather than framing. For Costner, Spencer represented the power of accumulated craft, the kind that allows an actor to elevate an ensemble simply by listening as intently as she speaks, and he frequently praised her ability to transform historical material into something urgent and intimate. Superhero spectacle paired him with Diane Lane in Man of Steel, where they portrayed the adoptive parents whose moral guidance shapes Superman himself. Costner admired Lane's ability to bring domestic realism into cosmic stakes, grounding mythic narrative in everyday tenderness and resolve. He later reflected on how she balanced strength with compassion, never allowing sentimentality to overpower credibility, and described her presence as quietly luminous, the sort that stabilizes stories threatening to float into abstraction. To him, Lane's beauty lay in emotional credibility, in the way she made extraordinary circumstances feel personal, and in how decades of experience gave her performances an almost gravitational calm. Finally, one of Costner's more volatile early collaborations came with Madeleine Stowe in Revenge, a dark romantic thriller requiring emotional extremes that Stowe embraced without hesitation. Costner has recalled being struck by her intensity, how she navigated vulnerability and ferocity within the same scene, creating a character as dangerous as she was alluring. Her willingness to lean into moral ambiguity fascinated him, and he later suggested that the most compelling beauty on screen often arises from risk, the courage to portray desire, fear, and defiance without protective distance. Stowe's work reminded him that magnetism is rarely tidy. It's forged in conflict, contradiction, and emotional exposure. Together, these 8 women formed Costner's private pantheon of cinematic allure, not defined by fashion or celebrity but by discipline, bravery, intelligence, and the willingness to carry emotional weight in front of millions. Each collaboration reinforced his belief that lasting beauty in film is inseparable from craft, empathy, and endurance, and that the women who shaped his greatest projects did so not through surface glamour but through the deeper radiance of artistic conviction.